It's really an honor to get this opportunity to come here to a venue that's a little bit different than the typical venues that you might expect a Republican congressman to attend. But I have really the honor of saying I've enjoyed working with the ACLU on a number of issues over the last several years. When I first got to the State House, people found it very strange, obviously, that I'd be working with the ACLU. But I explained to them that the ACLU was willing to work with me on a number of issues that I think conservatives and libertarian Republicans really care about. And at the state level, those were related to due process in criminal law. And what I found repeatedly was that on both sides of the aisle, we had members of the State House trying to make it more difficult for criminal defendants to get a fair trial. So if there were crimes that were hard to prosecute, you'd have prosecutors coming in and lobbying for creating new crimes, but eliminating one or more of the elements of an existing crime so that you could more easily prosecute people. And in case after case, I found that the organization that was standing up for the rights of Americans was the ACLU. That they came in and they would come to our committee meetings. I was on the Judiciary Committee, and they would come in and really express their concern about pieces of legislation and often didn't find many allies in the legislature. And in fact, there were several times where I was the only one on their side on an issue. You'd have all the Democrats and all the Republicans against them, and I'd be the only one siding with them. I think there was a few pieces of legislation like that. But it's critically important that we, when we're working in a legislature or working in Congress, that we find common ground and work together where we can. There are obviously areas of disagreement, and I don't think we need to dwell on those here tonight. But where we find areas of common ground, let's work together. And I can tell you from my experience in Lansing and in Washington, there are way too many organizations out there where if you disagree with them on one or two points, you're done. They don't want to talk to you about any other points. You could be with them 99% of the time, but if you're against them 1% of the time, they're done with you. And it's been my experience working with the ACLU, and I worked with Shelley Weisberg quite a bit in the State House, and she did a fantastic job. It's been my experience that they were willing to set the other things aside and focus on the things where we had a common cause. And when I got to Congress, it wasn't a surprise to me when the ACLU came knocking on my door and said, hey, we'd like to work with you on some issues. Whereas a lot of other groups, like I said, if you're not with them on just a couple things, they're not even coming back to talk to you. So that's really how I came to be aware of the indefinite detention issue, was actually the ACLU coming to my office and raising concerns about the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, long before I had really heard about the issue. And so when I heard about it, I immediately said, yeah, we'd love to help you. Because it's not just helping the ACLU, it's helping all Americans. Everyone has the right to due process in this country, the right to be charged with a crime, the right to have a full trial. And I was delighted to help them on this issue. And I would say that it's important to note for those who maybe view the ACLU as a democratic organization, on the Democratic Party side of things, that there is a growing group of libertarian Republicans with whom there's a large overlap on these issues. And actually, I would say, during my time in Congress, that the biggest proponents of protecting our civil liberties, those who are fighting the hardest on it, have been libertarian Republicans. So we need to be careful when we think about which party is really on the side of civil liberties. I think both parties do their part, and both parties do their part to harm civil liberties. And unfortunately, it seems that both parties are doing more to harm civil liberties than help. But the libertarian Republican wing of the Republican Party, and I would say it's maybe not even a wing anymore, it's a large portion of the Republican Party, is really making an impact on these issues. And the way you can see it most clearly is with Senator Rand Paul's recent filibuster, where he went to the Senate floor and for 13 hours tried to get a response out of the Obama administration about whether they could use a weaponized drone on American soil to kill an American citizen without any due process. And today, I was reading the newspaper and saw what I think are the first signs that this has been that his efforts were very effective, and that libertarian Republicans and those who joined us in these efforts have been effective. I noticed an article that said about a year ago, when it comes to the use of targeted drones, the government's use of drones to commit targeted killings against U.S. citizens, that about a year ago, 65% of Americans were in favor and 26% were against. And now, just a year later, the number is 41% in favor and 52% against. That is a huge swing. In fact, on a net basis, it's a swing of about 50 points. And I think you have to look at what many people are doing in Congress, but particularly more libertarian Republicans who have joined and who have been willing to work with organizations like the ACLU on these issues. You have to look at what they're doing, because that is really changing the game in Washington, D.C. 79% of Americans now oppose targeted killings in the U.S. 79%. So the 41 and 52 number, which is already on the side of against, that's for anywhere in the world against U.S. citizens. But in the U.S., it's 79%. That is a huge difference. And I think we have a lot to be thankful for, that we're moving in this direction. For those in the crowd who might be on the conservative side of things, or think of themselves as conservatives, there's nothing more conservative than following the Constitution. And what the Constitution is really about is defending our civil liberties. That's why it's in place. The founders didn't come up with a Bill of Rights because they thought government would be great. They came up with the Bill of Rights because they were afraid that government would undermine civil liberties. And so they wanted to enshrine in law some rules to require due process and require people to be able to speak, allow people to be able to speak their mind without fear that the government will silence them. So I think as a constitutional conservative, as a libertarian Republican, as a classical liberal, I think we're making a lot of progress here as a country in returning to our roots. But we are still facing an uphill battle, because in the executive branch, regardless of whether it's been Republicans or Democrats in charge, there's been a tendency to try to consolidate power and shift power away from Congress, shift power away from the Constitution. So we need to work together, and that's what this forum is about. I look forward to answering some of your questions, but we need to work together and find a way to ensure that all Americans and all people living in the United States have their rights protected. So I want to thank you for being here tonight, and I look forward to answering questions. Thanks so much.